95 and SB 98. We will take them in that numeric order. And the first one has to do with school transportation programs. Someone going to present this bill to us? All right. Michael Cohen, if you're coming up. And why don't we establish our quorum? Thank you.
Leno.
Here.
Emerson.
Here.
Alquist. Anderson. DeSaulnay. Evans. Fuller. Hancock. Huff. Lamalfa. Liu. Lowenthal. Negretti McLeod. Semidian. Wolk. Wright. 2, 4, 6, 8, 10.
Thank you very much. We do have our quorum established, and we welcome you, Mr. Cohen.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Michael Cohen with the Department of Finance. As you well know, as part of the trigger reductions in December, home-to-school transportation funding of $248 million was eliminated in the current year. This bill would, instead of eliminating funding for that, instead spread the $248 million across revenue limits. We're okay with this bill. Just to make a couple points. One is it preserves the general fund savings that were anticipated in the trigger reduction. Obviously, that's our paramount importance. And also, as you'll recall from the overview hearing, we do have a major proposal for the budget year in terms of categorical funding and moving to a single allocation formula. This bill is limited to the current year, and so we look forward to having that conversation about categorical program reform as we go through the spring.
And let me just add that I'm sure of equal concern to the administration as it is to the legislature is getting our kids to school.
Certainly.
Anyone else want to speak on this?
Mr. Chairman, members, I'm Steve Henderson. I represent the California School Employees Association. I'm also a member of, our organization is also a member of the Education Coalition. CSEA and the Ed Coalition support this bill because this bill takes care of a situation where the trigger cuts create such an inequitable and disproportionate cut to those school districts that are so dependent on transportation to get their kids to school. Not only will it hurt the children who can't go to school, because many of these kids, especially in rural areas, they have to travel in some cases 2.5 hours one way just to get to school. It hurts the kids in low-income urban areas because sometimes they have to walk through dangerous areas if they don't have bus transportation to get to school. We believe that this is the right thing to do. Certainly, this does have some impacts on those districts that do not have transportation programs, but we in the Education Coalition believe this is, if education has to take a cut, and we wish we did not have to take the cut, but if we do, we believe that this is a more equitable way to distribute that cut. We would ask for your support.
Very good. And just to put a point on it, this equitable per pupil cut comes to about $42
That's correct.
per pupil.
That's correct.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Henderson. Others in support?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Michael Holsizer. Thank you. Mr. Chair, Michael Holsizer here today on behalf of the California County Superintendents Association, also members of the Education Coalition. We're in strong support of this bill. We support this bill both for the equity arguments that Mr. Henderson outlined, but also because we think in the context of the last 3 years and the over $5 billion of cuts that schools have taken on a per-student basis, that's about a little over $1,000, another $1,000 of additional deferrals. Right now, school districts are in no position to take disproportionate or inequitable cuts. And as county superintendents, we look at the school districts that are disproportionately harmed by this transportation cut, and we see fiscal insolvency for many of those school districts. LA Times recently ran an article where the Death Valley School District is going to look at a cut of over $1,400 a student. In Humboldt County, it's $640 a student. In Santa Clara County, the Lakeside School District, $340 a student. In Julian in San Diego County, $330. school districts can't manage that kind of a cut mid-year. So we're asking you simply on the standpoint of protecting the fiscal solvency of school districts to do the equitable thing. The education community came together in 2009 and basically said, as Mr. Henderson said, if we're going to be cut, we need to be cut equally. And to this point, until this bill was enacted last summer, all cuts had been equal. So we're just simply asking you to correct that. We understand that this is going to create some jostling, but we'd ask you to take a step back, as county superintendents have done, who also have districts on both sides of this. And they're simply saying, do the right thing, do the fair thing. Let's move forward, and then we'll deal with the budget next year. Thank you. We ask for your support.
Thank you, sir. I think we have some other people who would like to give us their name and affiliation in support of the bill.
Terry Anderson with the California Association of School Business Officials. We're also a member of the Education Coalition, and we're in support.
Thank you.
Jennifer Moreno with the California Federation of Teachers. We are also a member of the Education Coalition, and for the aforementioned reasons, we are in support.
Thank you, Ms. Moreno.
Leilani Aguinaldo-Yi on behalf of the Los Angeles Unified School District in strong support.
Thank you.
Pamela Gibbs, representing the Los Angeles County Superintendent of Schools, in strong support.
Thank you, Ms. Gibbs.
Dave Walrath, representing Small School Districts Association, in support.
Thank you, Mr. Walrath.
Lisa Salisbury on behalf of the San Diego County Superintendent's Office, urging your support. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Salisbury.
Erin Evans on behalf of San Francisco Unified School District and the El Dorado County Office of Education, in support.
Ms. Evans, always good to see you.
Good morning, Joe Rumbold on behalf of San Bernardino County Office of Education and Dr. Charles Weiss, County Superintendent of Schools, Santa Clara County, in support.
Thank you, sir. Anyone else in support? If we have any folks who would like to speak in opposition to this bill, please do step forward now. Brave soul, go right ahead.
Exactly. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Members, good morning. My name is Moira Top on behalf of the California Charter Schools Association. This is a difficult bill for us because we are certainly sympathetic to the concerns of equity raised by the school districts and what that means to children throughout California. But on the other hand, the charter schools have never been able to participate in this program. We are effectively blocked from participating, and yet this cut does. This bill does require the cut to actually fall towards charter schools as well. So we think there's a little bit of an apples to oranges comparison here. But like I said, we're all too familiar with the equity issues and the inequity issues faced by or within the funding mechanisms of school categorical funding. In fact, the legislative analysts just last week identified $395 per ADA inequities that exist between charter schools and our district peers. And so we do look forward to having a dialogue with you in the coming months regarding these inequities. We actually appreciate the fact that this bill highlighted the fact that there are these severe inequities included in the funding mechanisms for schools, and look forward to having that dialogue. But in the meantime, unfortunately, we do remain opposed and ask for a no vote. Thank you.
Ms. Top, I appreciate your comments and your graciousness in recognizing that this is a one-time resolution to the situation for the current year only. I have a terrific charter school in my district on Treasure Island called Sciatech, which takes students who have otherwise dropped out, left traditional high school, and take up this special course of study which focuses on technology and science, and rates of graduation and continuation to college are extraordinary, and I know that they're going to be hurt by this. So it's one time. We're going to figure out something better in the coming year.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you. Anyone else in opposition to the bill? Questions, comments from the committee? Yes, Ms. Negrete-McLeod, and then we'll take the motion. Thank you.
Sorry, I got to get up to get it. I'm going to vote for this bill, but with some reluctance. When the trigger cuts came in, half of my schools were hurt, and now with this situation, the other half will get hurt. And we understood that that would be the case. And so I think maybe it's time that we as a legislature look at some kind of equitable formula that will help in the future. Now I understand we have to do this, but in the future that we actually look at something that really works for everybody.
Thank you, Senator. Anyone else? Yes, Senator Anderson.
Well, I agree this is a great step forward, sharing the cost to all these districts. I'd like in the future that perhaps we could consider it as a percentage to the districts, because you have LA Unified, who ADA is over $14,000 per student, yet in my district, we've got some districts that are barely over $8,000 per student. The cuts as they come rolling down are disproportionate because they are raw numbers as opposed to a percentage of the total dollar amount they receive. So while I support this and I think it's a great idea, I would support it even more if it was a percentage to the districts. The other point I wanted to bring attention to is there are some federal mandates for busing, and if we don't support the busing, we're opening up these rural, poorer districts to lawsuits, further putting us further behind. So I'll be supporting it, and I'd encourage everybody else as well. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator Anderson. Sure. Senator Lamalfa, then Senator Huff, and Senator Emerson.
Okay. All right. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just real briefly, again, I like how this was a rapid response to something that was unpalatable to a lot of districts. I'm hearing from my districts as well that, give us more flexibility instead of just having a direct cut to transportation, and the reasons Mr. Anderson outlines too. But we really need to look at the equitability issue, and I appreciate Senator Negrete McLeod's position on that as well, that charter schools are a very important part of the whole pie of our state school system, and they need to have equitability here because it's almost $400 disparity does not help them. And so while this is a temporary solution, we need to have that long-term discussion and get that equitability back, because they're suffering a lot too, and they are very important as part of the choices of schools for people in all communities. So we'll go forward today, but we got to have this discussion. I appreciate that.
Thank you, Senator. Senator Huff.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Obviously we're trying to. It's a tough situation, however you look at it. So we're trying to come up with some fix to it. I think the charters have particularly made a compelling case that they're already among the lowest funding. Well, they are the lowest funded, and this hits them very hard. So, I tried to poll my districts, only heard back from 4 of them, and it was pretty balanced whether they were for or against. But I'm going to hold off today and hope that we can work on the inequity in this as it moves forward, because I'm confident we'll move forward. This is something that we pretty much need to do.
Thank you, Senator. Senator Emerson, we're okay? We do have a motion from Senator Wolk, and the motion is to concur in Assembly amendments. But before we take the vote, Senator Alquist.
Thank you. The whole larger issue is equality in school funding. And I'm proud of my districts in Santa Clara County. I know someone came up for Dr. Weiss. Many of the great majority of which are going to lose by this, and yet they were in support. But we also need to look not only at the equity on the funding issue, but, we have a lot of very small school districts, and for many years we've talked about what is the best way for parents and students to be in schools. So there's lots of larger issues that I'm hoping over the next year or two, and we've worked for many years on this, but that will really take some action on the larger issues so that we won't be confronted with things like this.
Thank you, Senator Alquist. Senator Fuller.
I just wanted to add one other point, which is that large cities, since I've had both kinds of districts, would also suffer under the old, because the freeways and all the congestion. Third graders can't walk across a freeway. They just can't do it. They've got to have some type of transportation, and so even very large districts would suffer from this. Even though they can spread it a little differently, they still have the same challenges. So I will be supporting this. I've heard from a lot of educators across the state, and it's a tough choice for them, but it's a better choice than the current alternative. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator. So the motion before us is to concur in the Assembly amendments. Call the roll, please.
Leno.
Aye.
Emerson. Alquist. Anderson.
Aye.
DeSaulnier. Evans. Fuller. Hancock. Huff. Lamalfa. Lou. Lowenthal. Negretti McLeod. Semidian. Wolk. Wright. 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 12 to 0. Bill's out.
Vote is 12-0, and the bill is out. The second item on our agenda is SB 95. Mr. Cohen.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. As you'll recall from our overview hearing, we are facing a number of court injunctions as well as delays in federal approval in a number of the cuts that you approved last year. In addition, revenues are lower than originally anticipated. All of those factors are putting additional stress on our cash position, on our ability to pay our bills when they're currently scheduled. The bill in front of you would continue a number of similar bills that have been passed in the last few years at improving the state's cash management by allowing us to access 8 additional special funds that have cash on hand that we can use on a temporary basis to cover general fund costs. This, combined with other administrative actions, will shore up our state's cash position for the coming months, really the end of February through the middle of April, when our personal income tax receipts really come in. So we would urge your support in improving this measure. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Cohen. I just want to make a brief comment, colleagues, for our listen-in viewing public, that in spite of some of the what I thought to be hyperbolic headlines over the past couple of days, this is in fact a short-term cash management situation. This is not a crisis. We had a real crisis in 2009, and just quoting from the controller's letter, he said, "Fortunately, the circumstances surrounding the current cash shortfall are far different from those underlying the 2009 crisis." He also says that though the current proposal is not an ideal solution, it is the best way to manage the challenge without relying on IOUs and delaying tax refunds. So those things are not on the table, they're not being considered, and that, in fact, if the treasurer had sold the traditional amount of bonds that he has sold in the fall market since about 2006, about $10 billion, correct me if my numbers are off, rather than $5.7 billion he sold, we wouldn't even be having this conversation. But by doing so, he saved taxpayers money because there are about $50 million less in debt service that we'll be paying. And, of course, the internal borrowing that this will allow us keeps the interest payments within state government for the purposes of taxpayers rather than to Wall Street. So this is a wise way to move.
Absolutely. We did save $51 million because of the lower RAND offering. And as we continue to make progress on creating a sustainable, balanced budget, our cash problems have diminished. And certainly, as you know, we still have work to do on the budget side, but our cash position is dramatically better than where we were a couple years ago.
Right. Others who'd like to speak in support of the bill?
Yes, Mr. Chairman. Dave Ackerman, representing the Associated General Contractors, speak specifically to the highway user tax account provisions in the bill. 2 years ago, when we did have a dire situation, we were within 24 hours of the Department of Finance issuing stop work orders on hundreds of transportation projects for lack of being able to move the cash over to Caltrans to pay its bills. This legislation will allow that to occur will allow the transfer of the cash and keep those projects alive. When I was served as Undersecretary of the Business and Transportation Agency many years ago, this was a very common cash management practice because the highway account was the largest account at the time with cash balances to be able to manage the cash flow of the state before our tax receipts came in, and this continues that practice in a very safe manner. We urge your support.
Thank you, Mr. Ackerman, for the historical perspective.
Thanks, Mr. Chair.
Mr. Chair, Todd Blooms on behalf of the Southern California Contractors Association, echoing Mr. Ackerman's concerns that he brought up in 2010 when we did have a budget crunch. Caltrans was on the phone with our members saying they did have the potential that projects would stop. SCCA, my client, sponsored a bill last year that would have the similar effect of fixing this problem. This is a different mechanism that we support. It gives the controller and other interests, with regards to transportation funding, the authority to go to the PMIB and to make sure that funds are still there. For that purpose, we support the bill.
Thank you, Mr. Blumstein.
Juanita Martinez with Smith Watson Martinez on behalf of Transportation California, which is a coalition of construction contractors and also allied labor in support. And I won't echo my colleagues here, but we're in full support. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Martinez. Anyone else in support of SB 95? Comments from the committee? Senator Emerson.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Not surprisingly, I have a little different opinion of you on the controller's letter, but he has told us that we are $2.6 billion higher on the expenditure side than we're supposed to be on our recently passed majority vote budget. And the SAC-B on today's front page, tells us that spending on state employees has increased by $500 million this year alone. And the governor has repeatedly asked the legislature to take action on many of his spending cuts, and my friends and colleagues on the majority side have said no to the governor. The governor has asked us to enact some real pension reform issues, and I've not seen any action on that. There are ways that we can take care of the transportation issues without going this way, and so I am going to be voting no on this proposal today.
Thank you, Senator. Anyone else in the committee have a question or comment? Yes, Senator Huff.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I echo the comments of Vice Chair Emerson, but I also have some concerns about what is becoming a disturbing trend about how we treat Prop 25 and its interpretation. Essentially, this is not a budget trailer bill, and the only reason it has appropriation in it that would make it qualify for Prop 25 would put a bogus $1,000 to give it a fig leaf to meet the letter of the law. Certainly it wasn't the intent of the law of what the voters passed when they gave the legislature the ability to pass budget-related votes on a majority vote. So I believe this is abuse of power. We heard about it the other day on the floor that perhaps one of these bills that the minority party forced to have urgency stripped from it would be treated again as a budget bill when these things are not budget bills. Are they related to the budget? Yes, but not in the way that Prop 25 intended. And so just on the principle, I think this should be opposed.
Any other comments? Yes, Senator LaMalfa.
I'm just curious how this borrowing does not run afoul of Prop 22 recently passed in 2010, and then Prop 40 and one of the Prop 1As that were more specific to transportation funding, and the message that voters have sent 3 times to say leave these funds where they belong. How are we going to not be in a constitutional problem by borrowing from this when they seem pretty specific about that, even though it may be deemed as a short-term borrowing? I mean, where are we going to get the money to pay it back anyway? So those 2 questions, please.
Senator Malfa, I'll let Mr. Cohn answer that. But there is a furtherance of the purpose of Prop 22 by adding additional benefits to transportation projects. And so, Mr. Cohn, I'll let you.
I think that's
further that.
One of the points I would have made, and the second point I would make is the difference between budgetary borrowing and cash flow borrowing. Here on cash flow borrowing, the money doesn't leave the fund. There's no programmatic impact. The proponents of Proposition 22 have stated their intent was to prohibit budgetary borrowing, which we have done in as you know, a number of special funds where the money actually is moved to the general fund and then it has to be paid back at some in some future budget. Here, the cash is only borrowed on a very temporary basis, and it doesn't leave the fund.
Even though Prop 22 is specific about not borrowing it for cash flow needs, I mean, do you see there's peril with that?
I don't recall seeing any language, but I think the ultimate point would be the determinant. Thank you. Is the furtherance of the purpose that we do think that this bill, with the transportation components that you just heard about, actually make our transportation financing more stable and better able to deliver our projects.
And Senator LaMalfa, I would only add that I think the loudest articulation of the statement that Mr. Gonis just made is that the authors and the proponents of Prop 22 are specifically not here today because they don't oppose what we're doing, because this does actually further the purpose of Prop 22.
I'm just concerned we're going to have, again, legal issues with that soon, because the ballot pamphlets was fairly specific about it not being able to be taken for a cash flow need. So we'll see, I guess.
We have a motion again to concur in the Assembly amendments. There are no further questions or comments from the committee. And did I ask for any oppositional voices to this measure? Seeing none, we will call the roll.
Leno?
Aye.
Emerson? No. Alquist?
Aye.
Anderson?
No.
DeSaulnay? Aye. Evans? Aye. Fuller?
No.
Hancock?
Aye.
Huff?
No.
LaMalfa?
No.
Thank you. Lou? Lowenthal? Aye. Negretti McLeod? Aye. Simidian? Wolk? Aye. Wright? Aye. 2, 4, 6, 8, 10 to 5.
The bill is out on a 10-5 vote. Colleagues, we have one last measure before us, and that is SB 98. Mr. Coe.
SB 98 reconstitutes the Board of Registered Nursing, which sunset at the end of 2011. So it extends the sunset for 5 years through, actually 4 years, through the end of 2015 in basically the same form that was in place last year. We urge your support and think that taking action now ensures necessary licensing and safety issues related to the nursing industry.
And given this will reverse the veto of Senator Price's SB 538, the concern in the veto message was related to pensions. This has nothing to do with the pensions, so the administration has no problem with the bill.
Exactly right, that the veto was completely unrelated to the provisions of this bill as it is before you.
Very good. Thank you. Those in support?
Chairman and members, Barbara Glazer on behalf of the California Hospital Association, representing California's 400 hospitals. We're here today in strong support of this bill. We think it's very important that the Bureau of Registered Nursing be reconstituted as quickly as possible. Although some of the day-to-day functions are occurring, there are a number of functions that are not occurring completely. And we think that in order to clear up any ambiguities, the board needs to be reconstituted, and it needs to be done so fairly quickly to clear up any ambiguities, particularly in the area of disciplinary actions. We think this is not only important for our hospitals, our nurses, but most importantly for public purposes.
Thank you, Ms. Glazer.
Tricia Hunter, American Nurses Association, California, speaking on behalf of West Coast University and American Career College, speaking on behalf of American Mobile Healthcare, which is a traveling nurse company, all here strongly in support of this measure. A number of years ago, if the Board of Registered Nursing had been sunsetted, a bureau would have been created. That no longer exists in law. So basically what's going on right now is the staff is able to do those functions that do not require board approval. Board approval is required to do discipline of any nurse, to remove any nurse's license. Board approval is required to change a curriculum, to change policies at a school. If a licensee is coming from another country or another state and there's a question about their credentials, the board is the mediator that determines that credential. None of those activities can go on until this board is reinstated. We strongly urge your support. I know there's procedural issues and other concerns, but in this instance, I am asking, this is important to the public, it's important to our hospitals, it's important to every nurse in the state of California. Please reinstate the Board of Registered Nursing.
Thank you, Ms. Hunter.
Mr. Chair, Member Stephanie Roberson, on behalf of the 86,000 nurses, registered nurses in the state of California, we also want to echo all sentiments by my colleagues, but also want you to understand that this not only is a registered nurse bill, you're talking about your advanced practice nurses. So you're talking about your nurse practitioner in private practice. You're talking about your clinical nurse specialist. You're talking about your nurse anesthetist. You're talking about critical care nurses. You're talking about public health nurses that work in schools. So not only is it your bedside nurse who provides the care at the bedside in the hospital, you're talking about settings in schools, settings in critical care, settings that are not normally your day-to-day thinking when you think of a registered nurse. So we support this moving forward. I understand we all don't agree on the process. We would have loved the bill to move forward last year. We actually, if you pull our letter, we didn't agree with all of the policy issues in the bill. We wanted a clean sunset bill. That didn't happen. But for the public protection and for the piece that the board has complete authority over disciplinary actions over their licensees, that can't be subsumed under the DCA. So for public protection, we support this bill moving forward. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Roberson. Anyone else in support of the bill? Anyone here to speak in opposition to it? Do we have any questions from the committee? No questions or comments? Yes, Senator Huff, and then we do have a motion by Senator Alquist.
Yeah. Again, this is similar to my last comment. We've taken Prop 25. We found what we believe a legal loophole, and we're driving a truck through it. This is a policy bill that's being considered today as a budget bill strictly because we can have it take effect immediately on a majority vote bill. The governor vetoed the provision that would have extended this because there's something in there he didn't like. But the Constitution is very clear about what can be done and what can't be done, and we're taking extreme license. I was trying to find the right word. Extreme license with Prop 25 to jam a policy bill through as a budget bill, and I just have to vote no because of the process on this. I think the merits are there for the policy. I understand that. But, even if this were to lapse, the work of the board will go on. There just won't be a board overseeing it. But that was understood when the governor vetoed it as well.
Any of your thoughts, Mr. Cohn? Otherwise, I would just, if that is the sentiment, and I'm just thinking out loud right here, if there is support from Senator Huff and others to do it as a two-thirds vote and makes everyone feel better, I don't see why
we would, but we can't because of constitutional prohibitions on it. That's my understanding.
That's right. Yes, the Constitution prohibits by urgency statute the creation of an entity. And so the real change that Proposition 25 did is it didn't call budget bills related to the budget urgency statutes. It used a different set of terms going into effect immediately. And so while it's similar in that the bill, as soon as it's signed by the governor, goes into effect, it's not subject to the prohibition on urgency statutes creating entities. We do think this is related to the budget in that the board was anticipated to be funded in the budget and is funded in the budget bill. Proposition 25 basically sets up two criteria for what are bills related to the budget. One is they need to be identified in the budget bill, which this bill is, and two, it needs to have an appropriation. So those are the criteria that the voters gave the legislature and the governor in terms of guiding its sort of the so-called budget trailer bill.
So just to restate, the Board of Registered Nursing will incur about $30 million in costs that will result from the extension of the sunset that this bill allows for. So that is our budget relation. Very good. Mr. Chairman. Yes, Senator Simidian and then Senator Emerson.
Let's go. I'm going to be an aye vote on the bill today. I'm going to be an aye vote on the bill today, but I'm going to give you the benefit of the doubt on this one. And I think the comments that Senator Huff made are worthy of further consideration, Mr. Chairman. We take seriously the role of the legislature in policy, and we take seriously, I think, our obligation to do policy work through the policy process. At the risk of sounding old-fashioned, that's kind of the good government way to do it. I'm going to be, as I say, casting an aye vote today, but I'm going to be casting a very wary eye going forward, and my support today should not be presumed to mean that there will be support tomorrow or the day after if either the administration or interest groups or members of the legislature try to stretch the definition beyond the reasonable bounds. I think Senator Huff's raised a legitimate point. I'll stretch a little today, but I think, particularly now that we're in some new territory with respect to what a majority vote for the budget means, we need to be thoughtful and deliberate about how that is exercised, both because this is new territory for us, and also because I think it's important that we keep faith with the voters on what it was they voted for. So I know I've said it twice. I'm going to say it a third time just because I want to make sure that the message gets through. At least this member isn't going to be amenable to a wink and a nod every time there's an issue that someone wants to use this rationale for.
Thank you, Senator. Senator Emerson.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Yeah, this is a very difficult vote for me. I'm a healthcare provider. I understand the dynamics here. The governor created this problem, and I don't know who gave him the advice last year on this bill, but the bill passed out on the sunset issue with a rather large majority. And I don't like this process at all. And he should have a better consultation with the legislature on these issues. I support partially Senator Simitian's comments. You've put us in a very difficult situation here today, and this is something that I understand the dilemma with the disciplinary actions that the board has to take, and if they don't have the authority to do that, I'm going to lay off this vote. I know it's going to pass, but this is a problem, and this kind of stuff has got to stop. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator. Any other comments? We do have a motion by Senator Alquist to concur in the Assembly amendments. We'll call the roll.
Leno?
Aye.
Emerson? Alquist?
Aye.
Anderson? DeSaulnay? Evans? Fuller? Hancock? Huff? LaMalfa? Liu? Lowenthal? Negretti McLeod? Simitian? Wolk? Wright? Anderson, no. 2, 4, 6, 8, 10 to 3. Measure passes.
Vote is 10 to 3. The bill is out. Seeing no other items on our agenda, we are adjourned.